Let's take this passage. This passage came in the second slot of CAT 2019 and an average difficulty passage. I would say a little on the easier side. So let's read this passage and then we will go ahead and take the questions which are there on the right hand side of the screen. So I will read the passage for you first. It says, for 2 years I tracked down dozens of Chinese in Upper Egypt who were selling lingerie. So it's not lingerie, it is basically lingerie. So the pronunciation is Lingerie, so it's lingerie. In a deeply conservative region where Egyptian families rarely allow women to work or own business, the Chinese flourished because of their status as outsiders. They didn't gossip and they kept their opinions to themselves. In a New Yorker article entitled Learning to Speak Lingerie, I described the Chinese use of Arabic as another non-threatening characteristic. I wrote, unlike Mandarin, Arabic is inflected for gender, and Chinese dealers who learn the language strictly by ear often pick up speech patterns from female customers. I have come to think of it as the lingerie dialect, and there is something disarming about these Chinese men speaking in the feminine voice. So when you read the first paragraph, you realize that the author seems to be introducing Chinese, not merchants, but Chinese people who are owning business in Upper Egypt, and they sell lingerie and they're comfortable with the language and the nuances of the language. This is what we get to know from the first paragraph. Let's go and read the second paragraph. It says, when I wrote about the Chinese in the New Yorker, most readers seem to appreciate the unusual perspective. But as I often find with topics that involve the Middle East, some people had trouble getting past the black and white quality of a byline. This piece is so Orientalist, I don't know what to do. Aisha Kenny, a reporter who worked at The Guardian, tweeted. Another colleague at the British paper, Iman Amrani, agreed. I wouldn't have minded an article on the subject written by an Egyptian woman, probably would have had better insight. As an MOL, man of language, I also take issue with this kind of essentialism. Empathy and understanding are not inherited traits, and they are not strictly tied to gender and race. An individual who wrestles with a difficult language can learn to be more sympathetic to outsiders and open to different experiences of the world. This learning process, the embarrassments, the frustrations, the gradual sense of understanding and connection is invariably transformative. In Upper Egypt, the Chinese experience of struggling to learn Arabic and local culture had made them much more thoughtful. In the same way, I was interested in their lives not because of some kind of voyeurism, but because I had also experienced Egypt and Arabic as an outsider. And both the Chinese and the Egyptians welcomed me because I spoke their languages. My identity as a white male was far less important than my ability to communicate. And that easily lobbed word Orientalist hardly captures the complexity of our interactions. What exactly is the dynamic when a man from Missouri observes a Zhejiang native selling lingerie to an Upper Egyptian woman? If all of us now stand beside the same river, speaking in ways we all understand, who is looking east and who is looking west, which way is Oriental? Now, if you keep on reading this paragraph, you will find that the author has basically spoken about what kind of benefits one gets. The tests and the advantages and the transformations what you experience when you learn a new language. And he goes in that direction. So the example of Chinese men selling lingerie to Egyptian women, and then learning the language has come in the first paragraph. And in the second paragraph, the author speaks about the advantages, the challenges, the transformative experience of learning a new language, right? And then in the last paragraph, it says here, for all our current interest in identity politics, there is no corresponding sense of identity linguistics. You are what you speak. The words that run throughout your mind are at least as fundamental to your selfhood as is your ethnicity or your gender. And sometimes it's healthy to consider human characteristics that are not inborn, rigid and outwardly defined. After all, you can always learn another language and change who you are. So the author ends the passage with the message that by changing or by learning a new language, you can actually change what you are. So in effect, he wants to say that language to a great extent defines your identity. And once you start speaking a language, you might turn out to be a different person altogether than what your identity has given you. So more or less we understood what the crux of the matter is. There is no need for you to go and read the passage again, even if you have missed some of the key points, because once you go to the question, you will automatically understand what has come from what part. So the first question here tells that which of the following can be inferred from the author's claim which way is Oriental. So the author says he has used the term which way is oriental, and it is there somewhere towards the end of the passage. If you So this is what mapping does. By mapping, I mean to say that if a word comes in the question, you should be good enough to go and check where exactly that word has come from. So it has come in the second half of the passage, right? And he has said which way is oriental. So we must try to infer something from this part of the passage. So we need to carefully read all these sentences, all these lines, so that we are in a better position to answer the question. It says, my identity as a white male was far less important than my ability to communicate, and what easily lobbed word orientalist hardly captures the complexity of our interactions. What exactly is dynamic when a man from Missouri observes a Zhejiang native selling lingerie to an Upper Egyptian woman? If all of us now stand beside the same river, speaking in ways we all understand, who is looking east and who is looking west, which way is oriental? So the author tries to say that there is no corresponding sense of identity linguistics, in the sense that when you are speaking the same language, then there is nothing like oriental or occidental. There is nothing like east and the west. So, for example, if I go to let's say Arabia, and I start speaking Arabic, then I would be more, we would be more familiar with each other, and there would be little difference between the two, in the sense that language can break barriers. This is what he wants to say. So, if you look at it, the answer has to be from option number 2. It says learning another language can mitigate cultural hierarchies. Precisely, which way is oriental basically means there is no, if someone from if someone from the west speaks Arabic, and that person would be confused. If oriental is the east and occidental is the west, then you have a western person speaking the eastern language. So which way is oriental? In the sense that learning language can mitigate cultural hierarchies, and that this is precisely what has come in the paragraph subsequent to that. So if you read that paragraph, the last part and the last part of the paragraph, so sometimes we can infer what exactly has the author to say, not from where it has come. So this is which way is oriental. So after this, he has given the answer. He says there is no corresponding sense of identity linguistics. You are what you speak. The words that run throughout your mind are at least as fundamental to your selfhood as is your ethnicity. So once you start speaking a language, you are basically the person from that area. So it basically breaks all the barriers, right? I would say this is an easy question. There is no difficulty answering this. Option 1 says goodwill alone mitigates, but then goodwill is not the concern here. The concern is language, and not globalization either. So it all goes out, and option 2 is the best choice and the right answer. Now let's go ahead and take the second question. It says, according to the passage, which of the following is not responsible for language's ability to change us? So if you look at it says not responsible. So when you say not responsible, you have to go and pick certain things and check what is not responsible. So one says language's intrinsic connection to our notions of self-identity, language's ability to meditate impact of identity markers one is born with, the twists and turns in the evolution of language over time, and the ups and downs involved in the course of learning. So there must be some reference to this. We have to go and check where exactly, because this question has come from the second paragraph, the large paragraph that you see in between, and it says that if you see here, it is somewhere it says that an individual who wrestles. So this is where the answer might be. An individual who wrestles with a difficult language can learn to be more sympathetic to outsiders and open to different experiences of the world. So the person who learns a language can be more sympathetic. This learning process, the embarrassments, the frustrations, the gradual sense of understanding and correction is invariably transformative. So transformative is the other thing. In the Upper Egypt, the Chinese experience of struggling to learn Arabic language has made them more thoughtful. So if you look at this part, then option 4 definitely the ups and downs involved in the course of learning a language. So it is transformative. You become more sympathetic. So it is responsible. See, if option 4 is true, it has the ability to change us. And you have to mark for what is not responsible. That means the answer should be something that is not responsible. 4th is responsible, and therefore it is not the right choice. And then language's intrinsic connection to our notions of self and identity. Of course. So according to the passage, which of the following is not responsible for It says for the language's ability to change us. So fourth says that the ups and downs involved, it is definitely changing us. And then two says language's ability to mediate the impact of identity markers one is born with. So for example, if I am born as an Indian and if I can speak Arabic, then the language is actually changing myself. Why? Because now I am no more an Indian, and because I can speak the language, people from Arabia are more familiar with me. They are more connected with me, and therefore language has the ability to mediate the impact of identity markers. So identity markers can be brushed aside, and therefore it is responsible to change us. So you have to choose between 1 and 3. One says language's intrinsic connection to our notions. Of course, if you mark 2, then 1 has to be the right choice. Language's intrinsic connection to our notions of self and identity. So if you are speaking very good English, then your identity is not just restricted to an Indian, but you are also to a great extent a Westerner, because the language has that connection with identity. So by picking up a language, you are changing your identity a bit, and therefore it is changing us. The only option is the twists and turns in the evolution of language over time. See, the evolution of language has nowhere come in the paragraph. So when you read the passage, you know that something has come and something has not come. It's like watching a movie. When you watch a movie, and if I show you a clip of a movie, you can make out whether this clip is there in the movie or not, though you don't remember it very clearly. Similarly, when you read a passage, the author has just definitely said that learning a language can change you, transform you, make you sympathetic. But he has not said that twists and turns in the evolution of language can actually change us. So 3 is the right choice by default, because there is nothing about evolution of language that has been discussed in the passage. So we can go and now take the third question. It says a French ethnographer decides to study the culture of Nigerian tribe. Which of the following is most likely to be the view of the author of the passage? Now the question says that a French ethnographer decides to study the culture of a Nigerian tribe. If he decides to study the culture, which of the following would be the view of the author, right? So one says the author would discourage the ethnographer from conducting the study. The author would encourage the ethnographer and recommend him to hire good translator. The author would encourage the ethnographer but ask him to learn the language. So if you look at the complete paragraph, the author has said that language somehow breaks different cultural barriers. So if option 3 is a proposal, it is very much in tune with what is given in the passage. So if I am an ethnographer and I want to study the culture of a Nigerian tribe, I would be better placed to understand and study them if I knew their language. And that is what the author has discussed in the paragraph. So option 3 becomes the right choice. There is no need to even eliminate the other choices. You can simply gather from the passage that the author would be in favor of the scholar or the researcher studying the Nigerian tribe's language, because that would basically break all the barriers. So we have question number 3, answer 3. I would say this is a relatively easy question. Let's go and check the fourth one. It says the author's critiques would argue that. So who would be author's critique? The author's critique would be those people who believe that language may not shape identity, language may not break barriers. So if the option has that, they would definitely argue that. So option 1 says linguistic politics can be erased, empathy can overcome identity politics, language is insufficient to. So can we say that option 3 is the best choice? Because if language is insufficient to bridge cultural barriers, then definitely the author's critiques have actually caught the author off guard, because the author continuously right across the passage keeps on telling us that language can overcome all barriers, and now you have the critics who say that language is insufficient. So option 3 becomes the right choice. There is no need for you to look further. Now the point is linguistic politics can be erased. That means, how are you going against the author? Suppose if you say linguistic politics can be erased, has the author anywhere in the passage said that linguistic politics cannot be erased? And secondly, what is linguistic politics? There is nothing like linguistic politics in the passage. And then it says empathy can overcome identity politics. So empathy can overcome lots of things. Empathy can overcome barrier, empathy can overcome lots of things. So how is it basically criticizing the author's view? It is not criticizing the author's view. And then fourth one says Orientalism cannot be practiced by Egyptians. What has that to do? They are themselves Egyptians. So they are Orient, they are the people from the Orient. So how is that, weakening or going against what the author has to say? So 3 is the right choice by default, and I would say that this was relatively a very, very simple passage. You could have got all 4 questions correct in this.
Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get notifications of future videos.